Welcome. You have reached review time with Imperial, and today's review will be MoonFall. Let's get into it. So this trailer for this film, came out maybe the end of last year, and I didn't know what to expect. At first, I wasn't even interested in it, but the more I kept seeing trailers, I figured, why not get engaged and find out what's what with the film. Now, this film had a decent cast that played in the film, and right off the back, let's start off with Halle Berry. She plays as Jocinda Fowler. Patrick Wilson plays as Brian Harper. John Brady plays as Casey Houseman. Charlie Plummer plays as Sonny Harper, the son of Brian. Michael Pena plays as Tom Lopez, which is the stepfather of Sonny Harper. And who else that's notable in here? It was a Donald Sutherland, Keith Sutherland relative, plays as Holden Field. All right, and let's get into the review. So this movie was surprising. What it was about. From the trailers, I didn't expect what it actually was about. Now, I haven't used this term in a long time in my reviews when I say Hollywood. And I used to say this in like a lot of my earlier reviews. And when I said Hollywood, that means there was stuff happening in the movie that was so Hollywood, it was like, yo, it's fake. Only Hollywood would do something like that. Something that is not can happen in real life, but it was Hollywood. So this movie had a lot of that going in there. So in this movie, you had starts off with Joe and Brian up in space, and they're in there with their up in space fixing satellites on the moon. And while they're up there, what seems to be at the time some type of meteor strike or whatever comes out of nowhere, and one of the men that was out there were Joe and Brian pretty much got snatched. So Brian made his way back into the spaceship, but he got snatched up. So they lost him, and then of course Jocinda, she was knocked out because the meteor hit the spaceship. So this is what we believe at the time. Instantly, Brian came back. When he got back to Earth, he was basically saying something went wrong up there. He started blaming the government. So fast forward some time after that moment, and some time went by. Brian life went to crap. He got a divorce. His wife pretty much moved on. His son, his relationship with his son was estranged, and the son was out being a rebel, and he didn't have money. He didn't work for NASA no more, and he was facing eviction notices and stuff like that. Meanwhile, Jocinda, she pretty much stayed with the NASA, and there was a moment where they had to do a debriefing on what they experienced up in space, and Jocinda didn't really have Brian's back. She was just telling the truth, but in her telling the truth didn't back what he was saying, because he said something went wrong up there, and it wasn't just some meteor that happened up there. So Jocinda, she has a son, and the son has a caretaker. And while she's working all the time, and she's was her ex-husband is a big shot in the military. So that's her storyline. Meanwhile, you have the character Casey Houseman. So he's been telling people he's a doctor, but you find out he's really not a doctor, but very intelligent, and he's been tracking things that's happened up in space, and he makes a discovery that hey, it's something odd happening with the moon, and it's the normal course that it's been running is running a different course, which is going to start to cause destruction here on Earth. And so, of course, through this movie, they're speaking a whole bunch of, if you into all that sci-fi, scientific, meteor talk, Earth, the moon and all that stuff, they talk a whole bunch of that stuff. But nevertheless, the bulk of it is that he's saying something is changing the course of the moon. It's going to be destruction. So he reaches out to NASA. Of course, they blow him off. And he goes finds Brian. Of course, Brian is not linked with NASA anymore. He's just making odd jobs. So he goes and impersonates Brian, and he talks to kids. But he's giving them good information, and then Brian show up, and they find out that he wasn't the right Brian. So, but that was his way to get close to Brian. And he gave Brian, told him what's going on, and Brian pretty much said he was crazy and blew him off. And he hurried up and threw his papers out to him, basically saying what he discovered. Meanwhile, you find out that Casey he has a mom in a nursing home who has dementia, so she comes in and out. At one moment she knows who he is, the other moment she doesn't. So, that's kind of hard for a person to witness their family member go through that, But nevertheless, that's what you experience with him. And when the mom tapped back into herself, she basically told him, I know they're not listening to you, but make them listen. Basically this day and time is social media, and you can really get yourself out there, and they will have to listen to you. So things start happening. The Earth started changing. You start seeing some destruction and stuff like that. So NASA now got involved, and now they got reports. Now the reports they're getting is the reports that KC had way before. So he'd been picking this stuff up and studying it. And so he pulled his group together that he had his following on social media. He pulled them up, and pretty much he's having a seminar with them. Meanwhile, Brian is asleep, and he sees his ex-wife wakes him up, pretty much told him, look at the TV. And when he looked at the TV, she said, your son is on there. He's like, my son don't even have a car. And she said, Tom gave him one. And so it shows the son get locked up on a high-speed chase with the police or whatever. And he pretty much got locked up. Tom, played by Michael Pena, has this high-priced lawyer. The lawyer ain't really doing nothing. Meanwhile, the son gets locked up and thrown in jail for at least a weekend or whatever. So now this is taking place in Jocinda. They sent a group up to space to find out what's going on up there. So they send a group up there, and now while they're in space, that same meteor thing starts to happen, but only this time they're watching it live, and they see it's not a meteor, it's an actually alien type, but busts through the glass of the spaceship and kills the 3 people that's in there. So they like, hold up. But the head government officials wasn't surprised because they already knew. So Jocinda goes and does her research, and she pretty much goes into taps into some archives. So the head person basically instantly he wanted to step down, and basically he was telling Jocinda, well, you always wanted to take my position, so here's your chance. So he oh, I don't need this position now. I'm gonna go put my family in refuge. So I don't need, you could stay in here and have this position. So that's normally how some people come up, because somebody else's don't want the position because it's crap now. Nevertheless, when she goes into the archives and research, she's looking at the old video they had of um, Brian and her when they was up in space, and she sees that that force was there then, and so they already knew. So Holdenfield, played by Donald Sutherland, he comes in and tells her, "You're not supposed to be down here looking at this stuff. This is, classified." And then she like, basically she's stating her case, and then she basically said, "Y'all already knew about this." And he was like, pretty much, "Yeah, we did, but we got to protect the world and not, put people in panic and stuff." So basically she's saying, everybody's blood on your hands. So you find out that the alien life force or up there at Moon, it feeds off of electricity. So once it feeds off electricity, it attacks. So all the spaceships, of course, run off electricity and all that. So that wouldn't be good. However, he tells her about a project that they had. That it was a spaceship that didn't run off electricity. And so that's the spaceship that turned on a light bulb to her that they need to get. And basically, where is that spaceship? And they basically said, well, we canceled that project. So you pretty much saying, most spaceships and stuff is in the museum. Now what happened is the father, when everything started to be turmoil on Earth and disaster started to happen, the father pretty much said, "Hey, I want y'all to come with me. The military, we going into a safe bunker or whatever." And the son mentioned the spaceship that were in museums, like the old spaceships and stuff, and that triggered her. So then she called her husband, ex-husband rather, and basically asked him about the project. He already knew about it, but said it was classified. And she basically said, "It's a chance that we can save. We got to go for it." But then you find out that he knew about it, and you see them get the aircraft. Meanwhile, that triggers her. I got to get Brian on this. So she links up with Brian. He tells her, "I need, basically, now you want to come and help me." She like, "We don't got time for that." And he like, "Well, I need you to do me a favor." Basically, his favor was to get his son out of jail. So she did that, got the son out of jail, government orders, and now they're back at the NASA headquarters. And at this time, they got KC with him. So KC, he had all these guys, this group that he had. They weren't your typical that you thinking like the brightest people in the world that's, looking nerdy or whatever. These are people smoking weed and all this, but they were intelligent people, just a different, how they carry themselves is different. So, but the group he had was already talking about all these type things that's going on out in the world. Basically, they had theories that the moon is not just a moon, it's structure. It's a structure that's making the move do what it do. And of course, we're just thinking the moon, the average person, just the moon is just some like space type whatever, but it's actually a structure that's making it do that. But, so you don't find out this. So they had these complications, there's disasters going on throughout the, so when you say MoonFall, particles of the moon is falling into the earth and it's causing destruction all over, making typhoons, mountain snows and all this. So it gets to the point where Jocinda pretty much saying like the spaceship is not going to go. So she sends everybody home. But then at the last minute, she see that KC, he didn't leave. He's still trying to figure it out. And pretty much, we can still do this. So all the staff left. She's supposed to be linking with her son to go to the bunker with her ex-husband. So she sends the son, her little son, and Sonny Harper, and the caretaker for the son, sends them off to go meet the stepfather. I mean, the ex-husband on in the bunker with the military and gave him the satellite phone, that the special phone or whatever, and told them like they need to get there. And so the theory was that if they get to a certain height with the spaceship, the gravity of the moon would draw them into space. Meanwhile, it was causing destruction online. So that's what basically happened. The gravity pulled them into space. So you got Casey, Jocinda, and Brian off in space in the spaceship. Meanwhile, it's destruction and chaos happening on Earth. And so you got the theatrics for Sonny Harper and the little kid of Jocinda and his caretaker. They're on their way to meet with the Jocinda's ex-husband. She's telling them that, listen, hold off, because they ready, all powers that be, war from different countries, they ready to just nuke the moon and call it, but it will cause destruction for the average people that's not in bunkers and stuff like that. And so they trying to get them to hold off. So she tells him before she flew up in space, you need to hold off. So Brian gave Sonny a gun, basically saying, hope you don't need it, but here. Because you know now that the world is at the end, people just going to do whatever. So of course they run into some goons that basically they had like a Jeep, took their Jeep and they're on their way walking. And so when they walking, they find, they're walking to Tom's house. And somebody comes out with a gun and they trying to make a little joke, basically saying she's a Karen, you know, the internet joke with Karen. And basically she's like, I got a right to defend my property. And Tom comes and pretty much, Tom and Sonny don't get along. Of course, the father thing, they don't really get along, but this ain't the time to be beefing or whatever. So the thought is to go into town and get some oxygen, because if the moon and all that things get switched, you would need oxygen, becomes valuable to be able to keep breathing. So they go into town, and the guys that took their car came in and tried to snatch the oxygen. And you know, of course, that's when Sonny pulled out the gun and they were able to get guns and get away with the oxygen. But that's not the end. Meanwhile, up in space, they're up there. The government gave them like a bomb to throw into whatever this life force is up there to kill it. But they don't know at the time what it truly feeds off electricity. And then, well, they know, but they think they don't have electricity. But KC has his phone, so it's feeding off of that. And then it has the detonator for the bomb or whatever. So they had to detonate that, and they couldn't. And as soon as they turned all that off, the life force didn't suck the plane up. So now they seen the life force retreat and go into the moon. So that triggered them, well, we need to go and follow it, because as long as we don't got no electricity going, we got to find out what it is. So it shows them going into the moon, and they going following, and you get to see that it's all these, it's a machine pretty much that's making the moon turn and everything. And so they like, well, it has to be alien life form, you know, aliens and stuff like that. So they're traveling, and eventually the life force sees it, and now it's going to try to snatch them again, and they end up getting into this like tomb. Inside of the tomb, they started to lose oxygen, but the tomb, and they passed out, and the tomb sealed it. And then when they woke back up, Jocinda and KC woke back up. Brian was gone, but they could breathe again. Now when they get out, they know it was secluded. They see all these things. Now they're looking for Brian. But now it shows Brian, when he wakes up, he's inside of the tomb, and he see of his conscious of his son when the son was little. And the son starts talking to him and explaining everything. Basically, the backstory is there was always humans. Humans created this artificial intelligence, out in another planet, and the artificial intelligence turned on the humans. Meanwhile, they had created Earth, another place. And when they created Earth, another place where a life force can start on Earth, what happens is when the artificial intelligence came to destroy them, Earth was hidden, and they could never found Earth until Brian and them was up there, and um, until Brian and them was up there doing whatever they was doing with the satellite. So that's why now it's turning on. It did diffuse the moon's defense mechanisms. So now Earth was no longer protected. So they said basically, Brian, are you willing to make the sacrifice? Because we need a human to do this. So what happens is from there, Brian, the artificial intelligence ship, showed Brian the way. He finally links up with Jocinda and Casey. He told them everything, and basically, it was already another spaceship there, upgraded, and they had their own version of what the military had. They had their own version of like the big bomb to kill the life force. So it shoots out, and of course, the life force is now chasing them, and so it gets to the point where Brian is pretty much going to make a sacrifice because somebody got to stay in the ship and basically make the ship a detonate bomb. And meanwhile, back on Earth, the people that was trying to get the oxygen from Tom and Sonny came, and now the Earth destruction is happening. All these crazy things is happening on the Earth, and what happens is they end up they flying over a mountain. So like I said, there's Hollywood, and the people die. And so what happens is now they gotta walk to a cave. That's what they're on their way. They go to solid brick and just wait in the cave. And so in the process of doing that, everybody got an oxygen tank. One of Tom's daughters that he has with Sonny's mom, her oxygen tank runs out. So everybody can't really see, it's dark, and they just tell him keep walking. And Sonny noticed that his daughter's oxygen tank is up. So he pretty much he knows her oxygen tank's up. He gives her his oxygen tank. Basically told her, I'll be right behind you, keep following the group. And she didn't want to leave him, but she didn't want to leave him. So but you would think the better solution was to keep rotating the oxygen tank and let everybody, but hey, it's Hollywood. They got to make it theatrical. He gave her his daughter the oxygen tank, and she kept following the group. Meanwhile, when they got to the cave and wondering where everybody at, she was like, he was behind me. So he died. That was the end of them. Back in space, Brian pretty much said, hey, I'm great sacrifice. You, Jocinda, you go back. This is my plan all along. So he knows all the information on what the backstory is. So you need him to tell the rest of the people. Of course, Jocinda's Jocinda. KC is like, I'm just basically happy that people believe me now. And I'm really, tell my mom I was proud of her. So he sacrificed himself, and they didn't know what he was doing. And he basically locked them out and pretty much said, detach the ship from him. He's going to be the bomb, and basically tell his story, take care of his mom and stuff like that. And so they split apart, and the life force came and sucked him up. And when the life force sucked him up, pretty much, he turned the bomb on and then blew it up. And of course, that at that point allowed the moon to get its defense mechanisms back up and take back over, stop all the destruction. And what it did was it sucked the gravity back up. And so it was a moment on Earth where they had gravity like the moon, and it was one of the moments where Sonny was trying to make it into, him and the caretaker were trying to make it into the cave, and then the gravity launched them into the cave, and then a tree fell on Sonny. And when the gravity pulled back up, it pulled the tree off his son and he was able to get through. So, you know, Hollywood like a mug, but it was decent though. So nevertheless, from there, Jocinda and Brian landed back on Earth, and they ended up linking back up with their kids and everything. So that was the end of with them. But meanwhile, back up in the moon, you seen an image of KC show back up, and it's him talking to his mom. Basically, the mom said you did good, and he said, but it's him. His conscience is really thinking. So he's like, "Am I dead?" And basically, what the ship told him, or the artificial intelligent computer thing up there told him, is that, well, basically, we scanned your conscience before, you know, you basically passed, but now you part of the moon. Are you ready to get started? And he looked like, for what? And then he's been all excited about the whole space and all that, and that's how it ended. So it's a decent movie. It's a good watch. I give it, out of the 4-star rating system, I give this movie it was good enough. I give it a 3 out of 4 stars. Even though it had a lot of Hollywood stuff going on, it was a good enough story. Yeah, it was a good enough story. 3 out of 4 stars. I can see somebody could take it as low as a 2.5, but I give it a 3 out of 4 stars on this one. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. Till next time.